A good afternoon, good evening, good day, everyone. Hey, Mel, you're back from Tassie. Great to see you again. Mel is a fantastic person. He has been sending text messages from Tasmania just after every time. You guys did an awesome job. Thanks, Mel, for the encouragement. First thing we've got to get out of the way. Phil wants to know if Essendon won today. Did Essendon win today? No? No one cares.
What is wrong with you? Seriously.
You just know better, Phil.
God barracks for Essendon.
All right, on that note, let's stand and sing, hey?
Yeah.
2, 3. He's our rescuer. He's our rescuer. We are free from sin forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound. Oh, how grace abounds. We are praise the Lord, our rescuer. There is good news for the captive. There is good news for the shame. There is good news for the one who walked away. There is good news for the doubter. One religion failed. Come and be fearless. Come to the foot of Calvary. There is redemption from every affliction here at the foot of Calvary. So come and be chainless. Come and be fearless. Come to the foot of Calvary. Every affliction here at the foot of Calvary. He's our rescuer. He's our rescuer. We are free from sin forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound. Oh, how grace abounds. We will praise the Lord, our rescuer.
I love it. Grab a seat, thanks. You're all very excited tonight. It must have been the venison rissoles, I think, out there, or going over and actually seeing the venue that we're looking at trying to purchase. I think that was just amazing to go and actually have a look in there together. And what we're going to do, at the end of my preaching, we're going to have just an open discussion for anyone that wants to ask questions about the venue, the money, just any question you have. And Jeff and Lauren are going to field those, and I'm going to run around this little microphone. And for those online, we're going to live stream that for you too. So for those online, if you have a question, you can just put that up on, say, our Facebook page, and we'll read that and we can answer your questions. So we want you to engage. We're especially going to live stream this at the end so that you can be part of that. In fact, our live stream church, Redgum's live stream church, is scattered all over Victoria, Australia, wherever we are, right? I want to talk to you for a moment. This venue we're looking at, for some of you, you'll never see it. It's not something you'll walk into, but you are as much of Redgum as anyone in this room. And with the raising of the 200,000 that we've got to get be able to get the loan to cover the whole thing, you can be part of that. But I don't want anyone to give online that doesn't do it just out of joy. It's got to come from your heart of joy. I had so much fun putting our money into the building fund. I've never put money into a building fund in my life. And I've been part of churches my whole life. So I don't know where they built their buildings from, but I didn't help. But it's been so much fun, right? And if you're online, see, I don't know who gives. I choose not to know who gives. I don't even know within our leadership team who's given what, right? But occasionally I have to find out because of the way things work. And a family I know in Sydney, just an ordinary family, have put $300 into the building fund this week. That just amazed me. And then someone else put in 1,000 online. I don't know who that was. But do you know what? Since we announced last week that we needed to raise 200,000, we have raised 115,000. We have in the bank right now, right? And that just, how does that happen? How does that work? Like, I rang Mark up this week as the numbers are going up. I rang Mark and said, Mark, this thing's, it might even work. And I'm so humbled, honestly, and so full of gratitude with the generosity of people. People want to be generous. We want to make a difference. We here locally, we want to be able to run a youth ministry. My whole life's been youth. How do we have a church that doesn't have a youth ministry? With a building, we can. And then Pam, she tries to steal the building, thinks she can run an art class in there during the week. Everyone keeps coming up with a little... Wait, we're going to talk about this at the end, but for those online, just if you want to be part of giving, we'd love you to give. Jeff said to me the other day, wouldn't it be great if we could just ask once for 200,000 and spend the rest of the time just thanking people for what they've given? How amazing would that be, you know? So for all those online, you're just as much part of Redgum as anyone in the room. Now, what's that? That looks like a birthday. In fact, Dave Stork, do you know how to play Happy Birthday?
No, this man does.
Do you know how to play Happy Birthday? Can you sing? Actually, can you sing Happy? Now, just so you know, it's Dave's birthday. Right. So, can you sing us away? Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday to you.
Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hey! Fantastic. Fantastic. We'll come back. There's a song we're going to be doing a little bit later before I preach. What are you doing back there?
We've got the smoke machine going.
And it's going to be a real time of healing for people. Like, you know, it's great having fun, but there are people that are hurting right now, and so we're going to approach God for healing for people. But back to you guys.
Thanks everyone for the birthday wishes, and thanks everyone for that giving. That is amazing to hear. I'm in shock, and I shouldn't be, but I am. And it's just why are we doing this? Why are we here today? It is because we want to worship. We want to come together and we want to worship God, and that is through being together. And it's great to see everyone today. And so let's do that, shall we?
Here I
altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to sing that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to sing that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. People come together, strangers neighbors, our blood is one. Children of generations from every nation, kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where your help comes from. Jesus, our salvation. remember where your help comes from.
Yeah, just sit down again for a sec. We're going to sing another song. Dave's going to lead it. It's called Healer from Casting Crowns. And in the last 5 weeks, I've been sick as a dog. There's 8 days in that. It was probably the darkest 8 days of my life, and Coral's worried about me kicking that over. Okay. I have a great capacity to knock over glasses of water. It's a gift. But in this 5 weeks, I've come to really appreciate the need to be physically well. And right now I'm feeling so much better. But I've become so aware of so much need for healing. And Bonnie sent me this song. I'd never heard it before, and it ministered to me at my darkest. And it's been used, and I've passed it on to other people. Like only yesterday, Merrin, you were in emergency with a racing heart. You know, like the needs are so big. And so while we do this next song, I want you to pray for anyone you know that needs the healing touch of Jesus. As simple as that. For those online, there may be someone in your house, someone you know. But this is corporately we can pray. It's not going to be a loud praying together. It's just corporately as we sing this song, use it. And if you need healing, just put your hand up and let those around you pray for you while we sing this song. Thanks, Dave.
It's hard to see the storm blowing over anytime soon. It's hard to hear any hope in the headlines or how to live what's true. We've been trusting in the broken to make us whole, but there's no new rescue coming. So the one we've always known, we need the healer. We don't need another hero. We need the healer. Deep down every hurting heart knows we need the healer. And only Jesus is the healer. Oh, world's looking for something, needing someone. Road leads down to black hole. Searching is done. Makes the blind eyes see. Eyes of the heart be open to the one that we need. We need the healer. We don't need another hero. We need the healer. Deep down every hurting heart knows we need the healer. And only Jesus is the healer. More than comfort, we need the King. More than birth, we need the Giver. More than blessing, we need your presence. More than healing, we need a healer. More than comfort, we need the King. More than gifts, we need the healer. More than blessings, we need your presence. More than healing, we need a healer. More than comfort, we need the King. More than gifts, we need the Giver. More than blessings, we need your presence. More than the healing, we need the healer. We don't need another hero. We need the healer. Deep down every hurting heart knows we need the healer. And only Jesus is the healer. And yes, we need the healer.
Well done. That was good. But see, it's not actually about a performance, is it? It's about what God does through that stuff. And I appreciate giftedness and musicians and stuff, but I'll tell you what, it's the power of Jesus. It really is. It's just that simple. It is that simple. Thank you. Have we got stuff for kids? Do they just disappear if they want to? Or anyway, I'll let that get sorted out. God values and sees singleness very, very, very differently than what we do. But the moment I even use the word that God values singleness, some of you have jumped ahead, jumped even to the wrong conclusion about what I'm going to be talking about. See, our culture has rejected God's way of doing relationships. But people still are looking for love. They're looking for someone that will complete them, their other half. They're looking for their soulmate. And in the looking, because it's a human longing, isn't it? The human longing of the heart to be loved and to love. In the looking, sometimes we make a real mess of it because we don't do it God's way. God's ways are different to our ways. It's a noble thing to seek to be like Jesus. But Jesus was single. Single, but he was complete. And he wasn't looking for love. He came to bring love, to show love, to display love. But God deliberately, he created Adam as single. Long before he ever introduced him to Eve, he made Adam as a single human being. He didn't do that with the animals and the birds. He made them male and female right from the start. And God didn't do it to show Adam that being alone is not good. Some are hoping that Adam, if he's by himself for long enough and then God goes, there's Eve, he'll really appreciate her because he's been alone for a while. But I reckon by the time that Adam got to his 100th birthday and he's blown out all the little candles on his cake, I reckon he would have got pretty over the novelty of his new bride. Doesn't matter how you set up a relationship, sooner or later you get very used to that person. God created Adam as single to prepare Adam for relationship, not just with his wife, but with another human being. Because Eve thought differently to Adam. She reacted differently. Like when Adam jumped in his souped-up four-wheel drive and started flying around those corners and up those really steep hills in the little Garden of Eden, Eve got really nervous. She was scared there'd be another car coming around the corner. You can't, they're the only people. But there are things that happen in our car that I'm very comfortable with. But I'm married to someone that's not as comfortable with some of the things that happen, especially in the past. I'm learning that we're different. And while Adam was single, God gave him an identity. He gave him a place to belong. He gave him a purpose for his life. He showed him that God could be faithful in providing every one of his needs. And then God did something that no one was expecting. God put some boundaries and restrictions around Adam's life. He said, you can eat from every little tree that's grown in the garden, but one. Don't go near that one. Not good if you go and nibble on that thing. If you don't understand boundaries while you're single, if you don't understand boundaries full stop, you'll make a mess of relationships. And when God said it's not good for man to be alone, he wasn't talking about lonely. Adam was not lonely. The Hebrew word that God used, it's the word picture It's the word for separated, but it's a word picture of a tree, and there's a branch lying on the ground, and the branch is separated from the tree. They're meant to be together, but it's separated. It comes from this root word that means divided. Adam was relationally divided, and God said, that's not good. So God created us as relational beings, and we need each other. Now, don't miss this. Your singleness is the foundation of all the other relationships in your life. Your singleness is the foundation of every single relationship that you're surrounded by. And some of you are going, hey, hang on. I'm not single. I'm married. It's too late. I'm married. I'm not single. How do you relate to God? You don't relate to God through your wife or through your husband. You relate to God as a single human being, as an individual. When you're not with your spouse, you relate to everyone else in your world as a single individual. If you're home and a friend calls in, you talk to them as an individual. If you're at work, you relate to people as an individual single person. How you get on with other people fundamentally has nothing to do with other people. It has everything to do with how you get on with you. Outside of your relationship with Jesus, the most important relationship you'll ever have in life is not with the person you're going to go to sleep with tonight. It's not with your best friend. It's not with a family member. It's with yourself. That is the most important relationship you'll ever have on this earth. And I know right now that some of you don't believe what I just said. Because if I was to ask you, what are two of your greatest strengths, not your giftings, but your two greatest strengths, and your two greatest weaknesses, right? If I just picked on someone, some of you would not be able to tell me just like that. Without thinking about it, you couldn't tell me. And even if you thought about it, some of you wouldn't know. But you know about someone else in your world, you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses, you can describe someone else. But how well do you know you? If you are the most important relationship in your life, how well? What do you know about yourself? The knowledge of God leads to the knowledge of self. And the knowledge of self leads to the knowledge of God. It's like this circular thing. And as it goes deeper, you expand as a human being. Now, I have this amazing capacity to put things off, things that I don't like doing. I keep putting them off till I never do them. But that has caused me and my family a lot of grief over the years. It hasn't always gone well. I also don't like detailed stuff. But that's a problem, because details are really, really important, especially in an organisation like a church. Years ago, we were meeting as a youth team at Coral's mum's place in Moroney Street, and it was just a normal youth night. The youth team gathered together, and just as we started, one of our team, almost like a spokesman, said, "Lex, before we start, I've asked everyone in the team to come with a list of all your weaknesses." And I was telling a pastor friend of mine this one time, and he goes, "What? I would have sacked the lot straight away." And I said, no, you miss what was going on. Because what they're doing, they said, "Lex, we want to tell you where you're weak so we can cover you, so this team can work a whole lot better." Because I was not self-aware enough to know my blind spots, to know where I was weak. And I was hurting what we were trying to do for God through what I couldn't see. It took a team of gutsy people to speak into my life to help me. And when we don't know ourselves very well, we so easily take on the expectations of other people. We take on what people think we should be like, what we should do. And that leads long-term to feeling guilty, like we've failed. We can't live up to other people's expectations, and it drains us. And we get to a place where I give up. I can't be what you want me to. Well, we're not meant to be. God designed us to know us, get to know us through him and his bride, the church, together. If I don't know my weaknesses, I'll be unrealistic about what I can do. I will take on things that will let down other people because I'm not aware of my weaknesses. I'll hurt people. I'll even blame people for my own failings. If you want a really important piece of paper lost, give it to me tonight. I promise you, I can lose it before we get home. Mandy has the same gifting. Don't give her anything. Give it to Coral or Aaron. Now, Jeff, he's different. Jeff is fairly reliable, but it doesn't mean he always has been. Years ago, when Jeff was working on a farm for us, and we were doing a lot of embryo transfer work, we had vets working for us and we're paying out a lot of money. There was one day we had to pay the vet a certain amount of money to get in his bank account. And we lived out of town and the bank had closed, but it needed to be in there the next morning. So Jeff was leaving the farm. We said, Jeff, we've got this cheque. It's $20,000. We're going to put it in an envelope. At the front of the bank, there's a little sliding little box, like a little letter box, and you slip it in there and that'll go in there and the bank manager will get it tomorrow morning and we can pay the vet, right? So Jeff got there. Now, this was a long time ago and they're just starting to get things called ATMs in the wall of a bank. And they had little dockets and bits of paper coming out. So they had in the wall of the bank a rubbish collection place. I forgot that had got changed and Jeff didn't look careful enough, so Jeff took a $20,000 cheque. Now, sorry. For those that don't know, a cheque was a bit of paper and you could write numbers on it and it became money. And you could write as many numbers as you like and you took it into the bank and it turned into money somehow. But they got rid of that system nearly, right? So Jeff took this piece of paper that had numbers written on it and it went into the rubbish and we never saw it again. We had to start all over again, making new bits of paper. We called a cheque with more numbers on it. If you don't like you'll have trouble liking other people because you can't give away what you don't have. Hey, Mel, isn't it good to be in the room? You've been running all around Tassie and Dave was so right about how you've been sending those texts and encouraging us all, and you have. You've really encouraged me. You've been praying for Bonnie so brilliantly all this time you've been away. Love you, appreciate you. But how good to be in the room, isn't it, hey? Good to see you. You'll be amazed if you ask God a question where that will take you, how God answers those questions. And in response to a question, Jesus talked about your singleness being the foundation of all other relationships in your life. And that if you don't like yourself, that's a significant problem. And he doesn't use the word like. Now, I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, but it's so important. I just want to revisit it for a moment. Jesus was asked that if he could take 669 laws and rules that the little scribes and the Pharisees and the religious people, all the little detailed people had gathered all out of the Old Testament and all the prophets had gathered 669, and they said, Jesus, can you take hundreds of these laws and just melt them down to one? Just do it. And so Jesus started to answer, and he says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind. And this is the first and greatest command. And you could hear the little roar of, good one, Jesus, very good. Oh, good, Jesus. And then he really messed with them. He said, but the answer's not one, it's two. And the two are so close together you can't separate them. They're actually one. They're one. The word actually means they're the one substance. And then he went on, he says, and the second is equally as important. It's the same. It's love your neighbour as yourself. Loving yourself begins before you can ever love another person. And Jesus is saying, this is like, I don't know if you can understand how radical this is, but Jesus is saying that the whole of the Old Testament comes down to you loving yourself, just as important as it is to loving God. You can't separate the two. And that if you really love yourself, you'll be able to love others. And he doesn't tell us to love God like we love ourselves, because loving God is very different to loving people. And I'll try and explain it this way. In 1 John 4, John makes this statement. He says, we love because he first loved us. And Jesus, in response to this woman who had really messed up her life, and she comes to him publicly in this home, and she gets this little jar of perfume and she pours it on his bare feet, and she wipes it with her hair. Like, that's weird. But you know, Jesus is really comfortable with weird because he doesn't look at the weird, he looks at the heart. And while everyone else is watching the weird, what this woman's doing and why Jesus is not stopping her, Jesus hits them in their hearts and he says this: she's showing much love because she's forgiven much. And the flip side of that is that if you haven't been forgiven much, you're going to love much. See, if you think that fundamentally you're a good person, that you don't need much of God's forgiveness, you'll struggle loving God much. Our need for forgiveness is actually a perception, because we're all in the same boat or aeroplane. It's a perception in here about forgiveness, because we're all the same. See, without forgiveness, every one of us go to a lost eternity. If you're in a plane and you're in first class and someone else is stowed away in the baggage compartment, they're hiding in there and the plane goes down, doesn't matter where you are in the plane, does it? The point I'm trying to make is this. To love God, we are responders. We're not the initiators. He initiates love towards us, so we respond. And he says to us how to do that with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind, and all their strength. And then he glues this second command together, the same substance, and it's inseparable. And he says about loving ourselves. And he says it's the measure that Jesus uses to show us our capacity to love others, especially those in need, which is our neighbour. And your neighbour might be the person in your home, your child, your husband, your wife, your friend, someone that needs your help in your world. I understand why some people push back when you hear the words about loving yourself, because our community, our culture has really messed with that. They've made a counterfeit of it. It's not God's way. In fact, our culture's way is to say, put yourself first. That's how you will be able to love yourself. And Jesus showed us the opposite of that. See, Jesus could go to the cross and not be crushed by our rejection of him, because his love for himself was so strong. Jesus, his love for himself enabled him to talk about himself a lot with pure humility. Because when he talked about himself, when he explained who he was doing it not for his benefit, but for our benefit, so we would know who he is. Do you know what a woylie looks like? A woylie. You know a woylie. Does anyone know what a woylie looks like? I'll try to describe one for you. They have grey brown fur. They've got a long tail. They'll actually fit into the palm of your hand. They communicate with each other through their urine. And these little scent glands that they rub on things to communicate with each other. They can only be found in a couple little patches in Western Australia and off a few islands off the South Australian coast. They are critically endangered Aussie marsupial. Now I'm going to get a photo up of one. That's a woylie. It's not a rat. I had a cuter photo than that in someone's hand. Lauren, out there in the van, what did you do with my cute photo? But, yeah, not a lot of meat on them. Don't worry about them. But what I've just done, thanks, you can take, they've gone. What I just did then with that woylie, I want to do with the concept of loving ourselves God's way. So I want to paint a picture. I want to describe what that looks like. And so here we go. It looks like self-confidence. Not arrogance, but confidence. For Jesus to walk up to 12 young blokes and say, leave your family business, come follow me, and I will make you. That's confidence. For Paul to be able to say, as I'm following him, you follow me. That's confidence. It's not arrogance. See, Paul understood singleness. And because he understood singleness, he understood himself. And he could love himself how God intended. And he could even write things like this. I'm going to read this to you. It's ridiculous. This is what he says. I wish everyone was single just as I am. Yet each person, it's almost begrudgingly, yeah, but you can't, because each person has a special gift from God and one kind of another, but you can't be like me. I get it, but I wish you all could be like me. Well, he saw his gift of singleness as so precious that he wished we were all the same. And if Paul got his way, the human race would have stopped 2,000 years ago. But thanks for God. See, God wrote Genesis, and God says, be fruitful and multiply and have babies. Look at us all. We've done really well, but no thanks to Paul. So what was Paul trying to say in a silly way? Oh, that's ridiculous. He was saying that I so love myself that what God has put in me is so precious. I'm so thankful. And I wish you could all be like me. Now, I'm going to share a moment into my little head. And some of you will think that I'm pathetic, and that's okay. Some of you will think I've got problems, and I have. But for years, this is honest. This is honest, right? For years, I've looked at other church leaders and I've thought to myself, I wish you could have the gift mix that I have. I feel sorry for other church leaders sometimes because some leaders are cholerics and they just trample on people, they charge over, they hurt people, they damage churches. And I think, you've got the wrong gift mix, go away. But see, I am basically a sanguine, choleric, melancholy mix. Now, for those that don't know what I just said, it's not just swearing, it's just words. And so the sanguine is the fun part of me that loves people. The choleric means that is the visionary with enough drive to try to chase and pursue something like starting a church from nothing. And the melancholy is I can feel your pain. I can relate to your hurt. I can be creative. I have no phlegmatic in me. I don't want it. I married one. Well, sort of. She's got a fair bit in there, right? But honestly, I've thought that is the best mix you could have for leading a church. But it's not arrogance. It's just a confidence in who God's made you to be. And loving yourself will also be expressed in self-respect. I sold a pup to someone once, a cute little pup, and it was just on the phone. I just knew their first name. I'd had no contact with them personally. We sent the pup via some other people. But I did say to them, send me a photo of the pup one day. I'd love to see how it's settling and keep in contact. A couple of days later, I'd forgotten that. And I got a message on Messenger with a woman with not a lot of clothes on, deliberately dressed with not a lot of clothes on. And I thought it was one of those things and you just delete it and get rid of it. And I saw the name and she's trying to contact me and I thought, what's that name? I know that. What's that name? And I went to Coral and I said, hey, Coral, look at this. She said, get rid of it. I said, no, hang on, I think. And so I opened it and it was the lady that bought the pup. She's a single mum and she was so excited, the pup. But when I saw her, I was so grieved. I was so saddened by how she was presenting herself to the world because she didn't know who she was. And she was so lonely as a single mum. She's trying to attract a guy. And the only guys she was going to attract were the wrong type of men. And I was just grieved inside because that's who she was presenting herself. She didn't know who she is. She has no value on her life, how God had valued, no self-respect, how God would give it to her. And a close cousin of self-respect is when you place a high value on you. When Nehemiah's building the wall and the enemy comes, hey, Nehemiah, come down for a coffee, we'll have a chat, we'll go to Mr. D's, we'll catch up. He goes, I don't think so. These are his words. Listen to what he said. I'm carrying on a great work. I cannot come down. Why should I stop the work and leave it to go down and be with you, you scumbag? Like, he didn't say scumbag, no. It should be there, because that's what he meant. But he had a value, a God value in what he's doing, and he didn't stop. The opposite of loving yourself is hating yourself. If you don't like you, and you're lonely, and you're looking for love, you are so vulnerable to being used and manipulated. And you will not place a high value on you. There was one night at youth here in Bairnsdale. We're packing up at the end of the night. All the kids had gone home. And a girl that normally came, she wasn't there this night. And she turned up and she's sitting in the dark down on the gutter of the street and she's just crying. And when I sat down with her, I said, what's wrong? And she said, Lex, tonight I've had sex with 2 different guys and I feel so used and so dirty. I just wanted to be loved. Broke my heart. Broke my heart. And she was hating herself even more at the end of the night than when she started the night. Because she had no value. She was so open to being manipulated and used. There are certain things that I will not and cannot do. Not because I've got self-control or great integrity. It's because I put such a high value on God's call on my life. It's so precious what God gives us. And that protects me, but it protects us as a church. And if you allow God to show you how valuable you are, it will protect you. When you love yourself God's way, you'll also be self-motivated. You'll even be able to have control and self-regulate your emotions. What you do will come from an internal motivation. It won't be external. The pack-up, set-up team that comes in every week when we're here in the mornings, let's start at 6 in the morning to set up for you, for us. Why? Out of love. Out of love to serve other people. We don't see most of the work that happens at Redgum. We come and appreciate it and we go. But there are people that serve and serve and serve. But I want to tell you something. If you begin serving and it's not out of a heart of love for yourself, the love you're giving out will get depleted very quickly because you haven't got much in here, and you'll start to resent the people that you're actually serving. I've seen that happen. Anyone that can serve in a church for a long, long time and not get resentful towards the people they're serving has to have an overflow of love for themselves. It will never work. Another little description of what self-love looks like, we're nearly there, is generosity. Generosity is just such a beautiful thing, but only when you give and don't need something back. And you can only do that when love for yourself is very strong. It frees you to do amazing things like honouring people, praising people, encouraging people. See, Mel, I'm telling you, I know we've said twice, there's a third time tonight, right? Your encouragement in your texts, I've shared a couple of those with close people to me because they were so encouraging. It takes someone that loves themselves to be able to do that, to be generous with someone else. Self-affirmation. My family laugh at me when I walk in the house and brag on me and tell them what an amazing... I've bred this bird. You wouldn't believe it. I'm the first person in the world. No one's ever seen... I bred this. I've got such a gift on my life. And I celebrate it. And they laugh at me. I come up with a brilliant idea as an illustration, like a woolly, whatever, woily, that's how you pronounce it, woily. Up until yesterday, I didn't know what a woily is, but gee, I loved asking you what a woily was, and you all looked dumb. Not one person went, I know. But that began with an idea in my head of how can I add a little flavour to the night and not go to sleep like Steve's struggling tonight. How can I do that, right? I know, Steve, you work long hours. I get that, right? But I'm thinking, how can I add I'll look up an endangered species in Australia, no one knows, and I found this thing called a woolly. And I came inside, and I'm so excited, and Mandy and the boys and Aaron just got back, and Mandy just laughed, and she says, Dad, that's woolly good, didn't you, right? Right. But see, I know when I'm preaching if it's helping you. And I know when it's not. I know when I've done well, and I know when I haven't. You don't have to tell me, I know. Do I like encouragement? Absolutely. But here's the difference, I don't need it. I don't need your encouragement, but I appreciate it. Last Sunday night, Aaron went home and he was so disappointed in how he preached because he imagined what he would do and how it would go, and he was so disappointed. But this is the beautiful thing about Aaron. Once upon a time, that would have destroyed him. But it didn't on Sunday because he said, I did my best and that's got to be okay. That's the growth of a human being. That's discovering, coming from a family that he didn't get the love and support that I got as a kid. He's had to grow into that. And he is. And it's so exciting when you get to see it. I'll finish with this. There's many, many, many ways we can get a feel for what loving ourselves is. I've skipped a few. But there's a big one. It's self-forgiveness. One of the most beautiful things that you can do to love yourself is to forgive yourself. And if there's things that still weigh on you and there's still pain attached to the memories, you're not quite free yet. And self-forgiveness is the same as forgiving others. It's a process and you've got to stay with it. And when stuff comes up and you realise, I'm still not free, just go back to God and say, God, help me. Help me forgive myself. I want to be free of this. Choosing not to forgive yourself is self-hatred. I'm going to leave it there tonight, but I want to, in 2 weeks' time, pick up and spend the right amount of time in how do we do this? Not next week, Mother's Day's next week, and next week we have Barry Clark preaching here, which is pretty exciting. Now, technically he's not here, but the people online won't know that because it's pre-recorded, but he's doing it just for us and as part of this relationship series. And I'm really excited about having Barry, that he'd be willing to do this for us. But in 1 minute, I'll give you the how to love yourself, okay? Just 1 minute. You can time me on it. It starts and ends relationally with God. And it starts in finding your identity in Him, who you are. And when you discover your identity, it helps you understand your value. And when you discover your value, you will fall in love with you. Because we treat valuable things differently. When you discover how valuable God sees you, you will love yourself. And God has given every one of us at least one gift. And when that gift is activated and operating in your life, it lifts your self-worth because you can see your significance. You can see what your one and only life is doing and the impact it has in your world. And it changes who you see you are, and you go deeper in your love for self. And that enables you to love others. Let's pray. I thank you, Jesus, that you showed us that loving others starts with loving ourselves in any relationship, and that is found in our relationship with you, and out of that it flows over to others. And I thank you that it's not just possible, it's meant to be the normal way we do life. And I thank you have ways that can just be for every one of us the same experience. So I just pray right now for those online and those in the room, that we would be so open to receive and understand your truth that would change how we see ourselves, how we value ourselves, that we would get to flow in all the expressions of what loving ourselves really looks like your way. Thank you, Jesus. We're going to go straight into an open forum discussion on this new building. And I'm going to invite Jeff and Lauren out to help answer. We just need some wise people to help answer your curly, difficult questions. And I'm going to run around this microphone, so if you two can find yourself some microphones. And if you'll put your hand up, I'm going to put this thing under your nose and you can ask something. This is going live. We're not filming you in the room live, but just the answers will go out live. And for anyone online, you can text in if you've got a question. And has anyone got a question to start with? Mel, yep, hang on. I'll run over. See, I'm healthy now.
Looking at this room as the size of it, is that basically what you imagine the area you'll need?
The building that we're looking at is 380 square metres, the actual area. The part that we're thinking would be the main seating area for the service, because we're having other parts for coffee and other parts for kids area, try that again. And so the seating area technically can seat, I think it's legally can seat, one per square metre, and I think it was nearly 200. So, I mean, you wouldn't have 200 in there because it would be a bit crowded because of having the band and everything like that. So, but the seating area could comfortably fit 150 people, and you could have 50.
Don't you love technical stuff? I reckon we can jam 200 there easy. Jeff would take a little bit smaller, but we can put 200 in there.
So the seating area we're looking at could seat 150 people. However, because of the parking that we currently have, the planning permit that we would apply for, because that's a requirement of the whole process before we're able to actually use the building at all. So the planning permit, we're looking for a planning permit for approval for 100 patrons, so 100 people. And that's based on the 30 car parks that are there, which would be available to us because none of the other shops use it. And yet, if we grow and need more parking, there's a few different options. There's some parking behind the building in the laneway there, particularly for people that are involved in setup and band and stuff. And there's other possibilities. There's even a block of land behind that we may be able to look at leasing if we grew and wanted to lease more parking area and could make an amendment to the planning permit.
Yep, thanks. Another question. Who's got a question?
What's the guesstimation of the time that's actually going to be able to be ready to go and worship?
Yeah, okay.
We raise the 200 by next week.
Once we've raised, I guess the process is once we've raised 200,000, then we're in a position to apply for a bank loan, and we've already been given an indication that we should be able to get a bank loan of at least 300,000, maybe 340, and which would give us enough money to be in a position to make an offer on the property. They have 525 as their current asking price, but we need enough money to do some works once we would buy it to be able to make it legal to be able to use as a church as well. It's not ready for us yet. And so the catch is that we've got to, once we're in a position to make an offer and get that accepted, then we can sign a contract. Once we've signed a contract, we can get a planning permit applied for, and it'll take approximately 3 months for the Shire to say, yes, you can use the building. We've already done our homework and had a pre-application done to the planning permit where we've been able to talk about it, and they don't have any concerns about it at all, really. And so as long as we stick to that, you know, not parking out on the grass, but are just using the parking places, and they're happy for us to use it for other things during the week as long as it doesn't interfere parking-wise with the other owners there. So everything we've been looking at is green lights. So that would take 3 months, and then we've also got to get a building permit as well because of the change of use in the building. But my understanding is we'll actually be able to apply for that, but be able to use the building, and we've got 2 years to get that work completed. So if our generous giving continues how it has, we could be in there within 5 months. So we still have to come up with an answer for what happens after next week, as next week's our last week here.
Yeah, so we don't know where we're going to be.
We will let you know by next week.
Yeah, but next week we're here, and then after that we have no clue, right? God knows. Yes, God does. Another question.
That's why we need a building. That's why we need a building.
Yes, any questions? Any online there, Lauren, come through? No? Is there anything that you think you should tell us, Jeff or Lauren?
Jeff does a pretty good job of covering everything. Yeah, just if you want to give, the details are online. There's still information sheets. I think Coral might have some, or are they up the back? And there's also different ways you can give. So you don't have to give just money up front. If you are more in a position where you could loan some money instead, that's also an option. So yeah, there's different ways of going about it. And we'll also need probably need a bit of money for some chairs at some point. So if you can't give now but can give later on, everything will help at various times.
And the thing that I want to say is that if you can't give, that's okay too. It really is. Like, you're just as part of Redgum if you can't give as if you can. Like, my 2 grandsons are sitting there now. Now, we pay them to help us with the birds. I'm going to make sure that we extract a lot of money for the building fund out of my 2 grandsons. If I have to sit on them, right, they'll willingly, joyfully give everything they got in their little piggy banks, right? But it's not the amount, right? It really isn't. Like, we all have different capacities. And so if you have no capacity to give, that's fine. If you have capacity to give, that's great. But we only want you to do it out of joy. That's it. Yep.
Another question is, like, have you got ceilings and all that sort of, what's your infrastructure layout, and have you got anything, you've been talking about this for more than a week, have you done plans and stuff just in your roughing in, you know?
It keeps him awake at night.
There is, at the moment, it's basically a bare shell, apart from 3 toilets and a shower and a sink on one end. It has huge flexibility of what we can do, but there's certain requirements for to suit the amount of people that use the building, and one of those is we would need to build a unisex disabled toilet and also add a men's urinal. We've already got thoughts on how we can do that quite simply and relatively cheaply. The fact is, the money that we're asking for to get in there doesn't leave very much room to do much initially, and our priority is to get in and just have the minimum done, and we just are trusting God that He'll continue with what we need to get things. We would love to have it looking absolutely brilliant right from the start, but we need to be realistic too. And if we just take one step at a time, and it's obviously a big one to get to that point of being able to make an offer on the building. Further down the track, there would be a small group of people that would get together that would be involved in some of the finer details of what's done, how it's done, with flexibility. We want to keep flexibility for things that are ahead. We've already got some different ideas of other uses that could happen during the week, because we don't want to have a building that's just only used on Sunday and sits there the whole rest of the time. And just adding to what Lauren said about how there's different ways to give, a simple example is the money that we're asking for doesn't include the GST, but the way the government works, we've got to pay the government 50 grand GST and then a maximum of 3 months later, roughly, maximum of 3 months later, depending when the payment settlement would be, we get the 50 grand back. But we haven't got the 50 grand, and that's not going to be in the loan because the loan will be peaked out. And so, yeah, if someone's got 50 grand that they don't need yet, but they will need, 3 months later, post-settlement, that's another opportunity where that could be an absolute wonderful blessing. And I believe that will come in. It might come in through 3 or 4 people, but it's, again, an example of how we can do it, where you can just loan that money while we pay the government their bit, and then they give it back to us. You'd think they'd just give us an exemption from the start, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me.
Any other questions? Yep.
You're making an offer which seems to be some time away still. In the meantime, what security have you got that nobody else will come and snatch the property away?
Anyone could steal it tomorrow. That's the reality, right? And there may be, like Jeff will answer this, but because we're going out live stream, we might not answer all our smart little wise, clever ways of doing this, Theo. But there must be a tipping point with what we've got now and what's coming in when we're getting closer. But
it's as simple as this, Theo. If this is a God thing, then we just need to follow the steps in front of us that God's giving us. And if it's not this building, God will have something even better for us. And we're just going to follow those steps. And we don't know how long it'll take us to get the 200 grand, but boy, we've got off to an absolute flying start thanks to some amazing generosity. And Lauren's got a question online as well.
Yep, thanks, Lauren.
So we've got a question, how big is it compared to where we are now?
Does someone want to step out the room and tell us?
This is quite a massive building, especially if you looked at all the other parts of it, but it's not as, the main auditorium part that would be is not as big as all this that we're looking at around us here. I guess it's more like if we took a line through there, it would be more like this whole left hand.
No, it's bigger than this, heaps bigger.
Without actually measuring this, it's hard to tell. It's a very high ceiling, which helps
step it out, Joel.
give it openness
Tim,
as well.
go do the
But it's 200 square metres is what we're thinking of for the main seating part, and then the other 180 is your other areas. Now, I think Kath had a question, Lex, when you finish walking.
Come in.
Where's he gone? Oh, he's stepping it out. Oh, he's a funny one. Who can ask a question when he's carrying on? Okay. My question is, financially, people loaning money, how are the loans set up so that they're secure and so that their people are protected?
Yeah, so we will obviously individually discuss the terms and everything with whoever is offering, and also we'll have an agreement drawn up with the help of Jeff Wigney to make it, who's a lawyer. So that will make it all above board, and so everyone on both sides knows what's going on and what the exact terms are.
And just to be technical, I've just measured this room. This room is about 200 square metres, Jeff. It's about half the size. It is.
No, we were talking about the area of just the part we would have
Yeah,
for the
but
seating.
I don't care. It's 380 square metres, the building, right?
Okay.
Which is roughly twice the size of this room.
There you go.
Yes. Point taken. Who's got a question?
All right. Have you thought of buying land and maybe putting one of those big sheds on to be able to accommodate growth in?
We have, Jeff.
Yep, that's one thing that we have considered. We've looked at lots of different options. To give you an example, if you go out the highway heading for Lakes, out just past the Seventh-day Adventist building there's a property on the right which was available for, was it 400,000 or something, or 300,000? I think 400,000. If you were to buy land like that, and I think that was for 10 acres or something, then just to give you a little bit of a guesswork of some of the costings that are involved, just to get approval for it and planning permit approvals, you would have to have special turning lanes put in on the main highway in both directions to enable people to safely enter the facility. You would also have to have car parking, which would have to be all asphalted and concrete curb edging, that you may have a time period to get that completed by. You'd have to have water tanks for storage for fighting fires for the whole premises, and then it'd probably be a very large septic system or something like that. And so before you even start a building, you've probably got to spend 500,000. So, because those costs are huge. I spent a year helping build Riviera Christian Centre, and they were some of the things that we ran into there. So you get to see what happens behind the scene just because of council requirements. This building we're looking at, which is worth roughly 500,000, already has all the parking, already has water on. It's connected to the sewage system, sort of. There's a few issues there that we're aware of. And so it's something that we can afford. And it doesn't mean that in 10 years' time we might buy 7 acres and put a whole complex out there. But it's important that we don't just always, the grass is greener on the other side of the hill, oh, we want better, we want better. we need to look at, well, what can we afford for where we're at this point in time? And if we do that with the right attitudes, I know God will really bless us.
Yep. Anyone else with a question? Because I like Felicity's idea. I'd be happy to go to a shearing shed somewhere. But the trouble is, we live in a world that's so legislated what we can do. And the moment you meet as a large group of people, you come under such very strict rules that the cheapest option is buying something that already exists. Yep. Sorry, where's the hand? Oh.
You'll get there.
I know God's very much in control of this, but we also need to be practical. Can we afford this? I've seen other churches go out on a limb and build, and a number of families leave the church and their offerings help pay off the bills.
Yeah, so short answer is yes.
Okay.
If we weren't comfortable with where we're at with our financial position, we wouldn't be pursuing it. There's a reason why we're asking for 200,000 rather than 100, because that's what's going to make it affordable for us. So if we can't get to that point, then we'll have to reconsider the direction that we're heading in, because that's going to enable us to have a loan that we can repay with the current level of giving. We're also really hopeful, and we fully expect that the number of attendees will increase dramatically once we've got a permanent building and we're in the same spot every Sunday at the same time every Sunday. So that will, moving forward, we don't see any issue with that. And based on our current giving, we're in a good position with the money that we're asking for.
Yep, good question though. Any other? Yep.
I haven't got a question, but I would like to applaud and appreciate all the hard work that's obviously gone in. There's been a lot of thought and I guess some sleepless nights, and I'd just like to show my appreciation for the groundwork that's already been done.
Well done. Good on you, Pam. Thank you. Okay, so...
It's actually pretty easy, and it's not sleepless nights. It's really pretty easy if you're doing things within your own gifting and... but I can have all the ideas in the world, but I don't have the money to pay for it. So that's why we're all different parts of the body, and if we can all work together, this is achievable for sure.
And it's fascinating. We had a heart when we started Redgum. I wanted to live stream from the beginning, but we didn't have the right people. But now that we've got the right people, that's become a reality. Doesn't matter how much money you have sometimes, unless you have the right people to drive something, it can't happen. And so having Lauren as in her role and her gifting, and Jeff in his giftings, it means that we can stay as a church still focused on what we're doing from week to week, and this can just unravel and just become a normal part of it. And it's just, it was so ridiculous. Like, when I first started talking to the finance company, Australian Christian Churches, and I had this big, bold faith, and I said to them, because I said, well, look at a building, I said, I believe we can raise 100,000 towards it. And they said, well, actually, you're going to have to raise 200,000. I thought, oh, no, how are we going to do that, you know? But we're already over the 100 in a week. Like, that is, I don't know if you understand, but that is phenomenal, right? And I know that will come in stops and stages. It's all not just going to happen by next week and we're done. But that's that's people putting their money where their heart is. Right? That's phenomenal. Like, for a church that's been going 3 years, I don't know if you understand how amazing, significant that is. So let's just finish on that note. I'm going to pray. Is there any other questions? No, let's finish. God, I thank you that you made us to be generous. And when we look beyond ourselves, it's so easy to be generous. And your heart is for us to be generous people. And so in whatever capacity was within our reach, I pray that we would be that, and that the story of acquiring this building would be written into the stories we tell of the glory of God. The way God works in the supernatural. What seems impossible to man is not impossible for you, God. Father, we aren't just stepping out in arrogance or assumptions. We're actually trusting you. We're following you. And I thank you for that. I thank you for this journey that we're on together. Thank you, Lord. So next week, Mother's Day, Coral's birthday, and Barry Clark speaking at Redgum. I reckon that's fantastic. So good night, everyone. Thanks for being part of our little gathering tonight, and we'll see you next week. See ya.